Welcome everyone. So I have been spending a ton of time putting all of our ideas into a 3D computer model. And today I'm going to show you through all the house plan in all of its nitty-gritty details, and it'll be pretty interesting to see how much of this actually turns into reality once the architects get involved. So I'm going to tackle this in kind of specific areas at a time. So if you're interested in a particular spot, room, what have you, just feel free to kind of skip through and then you'll be able to see rooms at a time. So first thing to call out is what you're seeing over on this left-hand side. That's the existing house. So we're not going to be doing too much with that existing house, but I'll point out a few key details a little later on. So everything you see here in green is really the new house. And this is just kind of me playing around. None of the colors or specifics like that have really been finalized. But one thing to note while we're on the exterior is this is going to actually be a south-facing roof. So we won't be putting in solar panels right away, but when we do, this will be in the perfect orientation to capture all of that solar action. In this direction, like I mentioned, you'd be walking around the back of the existing house, and that's where this would live. And that's where you'd be kind of greeted with, a lot of windows. We really like the 3-panel style porch doors over here, and then a single kind of man door as it is to go into the mudroom over on this left hand side. And I'm really hoping we can get these triangle windows up the top in check, because as you'll see later, this is all actually open space in the kitchen, which should look really nice from the inside, and adding that additional light up there would be really nice. But one big plan we have is for a contractor to build out the entire shell of the place, and then I will serve as the general contractor to get all the kitchen, bathroom, and everything done later. So major phase 1 that we're trying to tackle this year is that basically the shell, the watertight shell, is all done to keep kind of costs in check, and then I can do the rest later as much as I can DIY, but of course calling in the big guns for anywhere I need. So we're hoping that our shell budget, as it were, incorporates or is able to incorporate the triangle windows. But so I'm keeping my fingers crossed on that. I know they're going to be a bit of a bigger ticket item, and we may have to scale down to like just a regular square window at the top there, but we'll see how we go. So spinning around to this south-facing side, we won't have the screened-in porch done straight away, of course. That's probably a little bit later. This whole thing is really just like the dream end state. None of this will be there day one. We can't afford that, but we're gonna get there. And so I'm having fun dreaming. And I'm having fun that you're listening along with me. So, in short, from the exterior, a couple of little details that I thought were interesting is I'd like to put a simple outlet over there. When we have parties, we love to have parties in the fall, and so this will be a good table for food. So we can put, crock pots or whatever, and make sure that we've got kind of a food station over here. So this is obviously a deck. And then I love string lights in the backyard, so we're going to have, some string lights going around the back and side of the screened-in porch. And so one small detail for that is a lot of string lights are just plug-in, so I want to get an outlet actually under the soffit area down here. So having a little outlet there means I'm not going to have a tail of a big cord going down to the bottom. So that'll be a neat little detail. But by knowing that we want to do a screened-in porch here, helps us with a couple things during the kind of shell design phase. One is that I can get the contractor to make sure that they put basically some electrical just wiring here with, like 10 feet of slack or something, just coiled up, penetrated through, the siding, and making sure that it's all sealed nice. But by having kind of 10 feet of slack, when I go to do the screened-in porch, I'll be able to get that ran when I do the roof to connect up to a central fan and light in there. And actually, while we're over here too, one thing that I'd love to put in is just a couple of speakers. So if I put one speaker in the screened-in porch area, I'll be able to put a second one right by the mudroom door over here. So that way we get some music coming from some music outside, really covering this major section here where we do hang out quite a lot. And also the very back when we're just sitting in the screening porch. I'll have to be careful of volume levels. This one will obviously need to be louder than that one, but that should serve as a nice way of not having to carry a Bluetooth speaker around, which isn't a terrible problem. But you know, while we're planning, it's good just to throw audio cables in there. All right, so I'm going to spin all the way to the back of that look right there. This is technically the north side, so no plan to put solar on this side, and just simple, you know, windows and bulkhead access. So no plan to have a living room space on the ground level. We're gonna keep it simple and just have a kitchen, an island, and throw a TV on the wall over here. So one key detail, while we are gonna finish this ourselves later and therefore not have a kitchen day one, knowing where the window placement is so that we can make sure we can fit a TV and it's not terribly skinny on that wall structure right there. Making sure we got plenty of space for a TV there is going to be critical. Actually, nerdy detail, I have asked them to also throw some conduit that goes from this TV all the way down into the basement, because we are going to do a full eventually finished basement. So having that conduit there means I can run all the low voltage like network or HDMI if I want to run that and have it connected elsewhere. So putting that in now is definitely going to save me in the long run, especially when I'm doing a lot of this myself. So just quick details looking directly at the kitchen layout here. So couple of options is we're going with a corner sink because we're right-handed, and just our natural flow of grabbing stuff from the sink and putting it into the dishwasher, we wanted to go in that general direction. And having the dishwasher on the left or swapping these around might end up creating a hazard going up these loft ladder stairs. So these are actually just going to be somewhat of an acute angle, but hopefully not too bad. We've stayed in some Airbnbs actually that have had something similar to this, and it's worked out really well. It's kind of nice, and if we went with a full set of stairs, it would really protrude pretty deeply into the kitchen. So having it quite acute, but not a direct like flat up against the wall, gives us a little shelf space too, so we can use that for a little bit of storage. And once we get into the really deep layers down here, this is where we're actually going to store our trash and recycling. So that'll be kind of interesting. So given that this is a passive design, all we need is a single mini split for both heating and cooling, which is pretty unheard of in the Northeast. Most people have giant boilers or other HVAC systems to do a whole house. Now this is total going to be less than 900 square feet between the main structure here and the mudroom. I think it's going to be a little under or around 800 square feet when it's done. But this, given the really thick walls, is able to do everything. The main thing we got to keep on top of is just making sure there's airflow sufficient between the rooms. And I'll show you a few interesting details about that later. So a couple other considerations while we were here. We want to do the full height kitchen cabinets, being that this is a smaller footprint house. Like I said, about 800 square feet, 800 to 900 when it's done. I wanted to go the full ceiling height. And so because it's full ceiling height, I actually want to throw an outlet right on top above the kitchen cabinets, and then I can throw a little Bluetooth speaker in there and save the cost of not getting all the wiring run for, say, a whole house speaker setup. So one other detail, I'm going to spin this around. You'll notice there isn't a level flat roof structure up here. This is going to be open. So I'm kind of like sitting in the loft, as you could say. And so it's going to be a really nice view from up there going down into the kitchen area there, and really have a lot of natural light. And while it is going to be on the smaller side, it'll feel a lot bigger given that it has this open vaulted kind of ceiling space. A couple other small but interesting details is we have cats. We have a few cats, and so we want to make sure they can get up to the loft too. what we've incorporated is having enough space either side of these 3 doors to have cat towers that they can run up and then run along the top of the door and then say along the kitchen cabinets here and then jump into the lofted space. And having good practice when you have several cats is 2 ways to get up and down in case one or more of them are actually just sleeping or hanging out. So we're going to have a second run along the top above the TV and then down the other side. So they'll be quite spoilt kitties. And from a lighting perspective, we're going to make sure that in the vaulted condition, we rough in the electrical for, say, an island light and also under kitchen cabinet lights as well. A couple other interesting details, like I mentioned earlier, having airflow into all the spaces when you only have one mini split is gonna be important. So an interesting detail is I am planning a cutout above the bedroom door. So this is going into the bedroom, and I'll show you that in a moment. So having a cutout above, we might want to put a grill or something like that just to make it a little bit tidier. But having a cutout will mean that if we leave the door shut for any reason, we'll still have airflow being able to trickle over and in, whether that's heating or cooling. And this space isn't going to take much heating or cooling, so we'll need a little bit in there, but it won't necessarily need its own register directly. And then to the right, this is where you'd walk in and go out to the screened-in porch. So the bedroom, it's going to have no windows on that north-facing side. So there wouldn't be too much light or heat gain that would come in this hemisphere. We don't get a ton. All of it really comes from the south, east, and west, predominantly south. So we want to really capture a lot of that south-facing sun. So we're planning on having a nice big window on the south side, a fairly skinny window on the east side above the bed. And so a few of the little details here is that we'd like to have switches either side of like his and hers bed side and have pendant lights on the top. So that saves a little bit of countertop space, I guess you would say, on the bedside table. So it saves a little space there because my wife really likes to read. So having some pendant lights there to light it up is going to really be helpful. And I'd like to also have basically 4 outlets on the wall here instead of the usual 2. So a double, and they have 2 each, so actually having 4 pluggable spots either side. I tend to have a lot of electronics on my side of the bed, and so that allows me not to have an additional like power outlet extension cord sort of deal going on. I can just plug everything in direct. And I also plan on having conduit as well ran from here to the basement. That's only a couple of feet, so that should be a pretty minor add. But by having that there, I can run network cable when I want to, if I feel like I want something direct connected, and also allows me to kind of future-proof any other runs when all this is going to be sealed up. And what you can see, this tube here is actually the same idea. So I'd like to have a conduit run into the loft itself. Getting anything from the loft all the way to the basement is gonna be tricky in a future fishing exercise. So while the walls are open and they're running conduit as well, may as well just run another run here. They'll just have to be careful to miss this window. So it can't be, say, centered in the loft, because if it was, say, directly below, it would end up running directly in, and that might end up creating issues fishing later on with too many bends. So going straight down, it'll just be super easy just to drop it all the way down to the basement. All right, let's get into the bathroom. So this I'm pretty excited about as well. There's a couple of details in here that I think are pretty interesting. So the first one, remember, we're doing the shell, so we kind of need to plan for where all like the electrical and the plumbing and everything like that'll go. And while we might not do everything day one, it's good to have it in the walls, when we're ready. So one thing we've never had and are pretty excited about is a towel warmer. So that generally needs a direct power connected into it. So having the power in the wall here ready will be really helpful in that regard. And as far as I've read, that it doesn't tend to make the towels super hot, but it can keep them really dry. If I've, say, gone for a shower in the morning and then I go for a run or hit the gym, my towel's not still wet, it will be nice and dry after that. And on the left here, you'll see there's a couple of grills. So one thing about having a high performance home like this that's very, very airtight is you need a system called an ERV or a HRV. And what those do is it's an energy recovery ventilator. So it's actually extracting any stale air and feeding in fresh air and actually pre-warming or preconditioning that. So by having these two either side, we'll have one extract for the kitchen. So this is kind of the equivalent of, say, a kitchen hood, basically. We'll also have a recirculating hood in the microwave there. But by having the extract here and similarly an extract for the bathroom on the opposite side, we can simplify that plumbing run by utilizing that same cavity and by just basically having a Y fitting in the wall. So that should hopefully simplify the contractors who are going to be running that in there. And also on that note, notice how we've kind of shared this plumbing wall as well. So having a tiled shower and keeping all the plumbing there, not on an exterior wall, given that we're in the Northeast and freezing can be a concern. So this is an interior wall. And here we have all the plumbing, and on the exact opposite side is where we're going to have the dishwasher and the sink as well. So again, that kind of just simplifies things, being able to share a lot of the same cavities. Now, what I just said a moment ago, how we're in the Northeast and plumbing on an exterior wall is generally a big no-no. You'll notice that the toilet over here is on an exterior wall. But I'd love to have that like skirted toilet design, so that way there's basically less nooks and crannies to keep clean. It tends to run flush from the top all the way to the floor, and those style of models require a wall water connection. So this presents a slight challenge, and one idea I have is actually to build out kind of a false wall or a pony wall out a couple of inches. And that way, we could stop it, around, the window here. We could stop it around there, and it would serve as kind of another shelf to put, whatever, candles or spare toilet paper or what have you. So it'll serve as an extra shelf. But by building it out, all the insulation will be in the exterior wall, and this little service cavity here can just run the plumbing there directly. And we got plenty of space this way, so just pushing it out a couple inches shouldn't be a big problem. A couple other small but interesting details is double sinks, so that my wife and I can brush our teeth at the same time, and then also having plenty of closet space. So that's one thing I've really been trying to keep in mind as we design out this is smaller footprint. I want to make sure there's plenty of storage. So what we're thinking is keeping this to about 2 feet for one side, and then maybe a 5-foot his and hers vanity, and then another 2 feet for the matching closet on the opposite side. And since we have cats, we do need to find a couple of places for kitty litter. There's never really an ideal spot for it, and because we want to make sure that the cats have visibility, that they're not feeling tight and confined to a space, but we want to make sure it's easy for us to clean. So this was an interesting spot to be able to put it. That way we can, this will be a tile floor, will be easy to clean, and we can put it just under the closet there. And then on the opposite side, we can just have a laundry basket or something, so that both sides match, because otherwise my OCD will just go nuts if one's a full cabinet and one has a gap. I don't think I could do it. This is probably going to be the most complicated thing out of this whole build, and even though it sounds simple, there's a lot of little moving parts in here. So as you can see, this is kind of where we'd probably mostly be entering and exiting all the time. There will be a spiral stair to the basement, which I'll show you in a moment. And then we have a laundry area as well. So you could walk in, say, drop your coats down, more storage. I'm thinking this will probably be like overflow for like pantry items, because there's no pantry over here. So for extra like food and storage. And then having a laundry back here. Now, it's not ideal that you could see the laundry like the first thing you walk in. My wife loves curtains, so we might end up putting a curtain kind of across this here, just so that it keeps it, a little bit cleaner and neater. We were considering putting some sort of door, but again, we needed another litter box somewhere, and by having a door closed all the time, that will kind of defeat the purpose of the cats being able to come in and do their business. And then similarly to the toilet, we'll probably have to flush this out another, couple inches to be able to get all the plumbing, maybe, or just go straight through the floor and hide it in the cabinets or something like that. But we got to be careful with this being an exterior wall as well. One other interesting detail with the laundry here is that it's going to be all electric, so there'll be no gas hookup, no natural gas hookup to these, but we're considering going with a ventless one. So also known as like a heat pump dryer, regular washing machine, but a heat pump or a ventless dryer, they tend to dry a little slower and tend to be a little smaller, but they're really, really high efficient. And also being ventless, that does cut down on actually needing another penetration or a place where air could leak back in, cold air could leak back in. So that'll be a pretty interesting thing. I've never had one of those in the past. Our current one is an electric, just a regular vented electric one, but apparently with these ventless ones, you don't have to worry about the lint traps because there's no vent going outside. So there are lint traps inside the unit itself, but they're really easy to clean. So that'll be kind of an interesting experience. We'll have to see how that goes. While we're talking about this, the couple of key details I mentioned that get a little complicated is that this is the back of the original house. This is currently a window. So by our town's code, we have to make these connect. So a door makes the most sense for that. And where this gets a little complicated is because the location of this door is going to affect everything. So to have a staircase here, there needs to be adequate distance so that the staircase will fit, and then the door will fit, and then have enough space for the laundry over on this right-hand side. So if we get the location of the door wrong, it might jut into the laundry, or it might not have enough space to put a staircase in once we finish off the front wall here. Because another detail that I'm really interested in is having this completely flat. So by having this flat, it'll look really nice and clean. So the location of the door is going to affect the location of the spiral staircase, which affects the location of the front wall, which affects the location of this entire front wall. So getting that right is going to be very important. Now, how easy or hard is this window getting turned into a door going to be? I'm not sure. You'll notice that there's even a couple of steps here. As I was doing some measuring, the door is going to jut right up against the ceiling of the mudroom. So we may have to drop the floor of the mudroom down, and therefore the floor of everything down, and dig the basement even deeper, and have a couple steps here. So it'll be kind of interesting how we figure that out. Well, the architects, will do all the heavy lifting. I'm just kind of throwing ideas at the wall and seeing how it goes. They'll certainly correct me if I've thought of something stupid. Couple of windows, doors, windows to the outside, make sure we got plenty of natural light. That's one thing we're really excited about. Our current place does have windows, but they tend to be quite small and not in prime locations, so our house tends to be kind of dark. So we're really looking forward to having plenty of natural light coming in. Okay, so as mentioned, this is the current house. So this is currently our bedroom, and this is where my office will eventually go. So we do have a mini split in there already, which is great. So I'll be able to work from in here and eventually be able to put a second bathroom over here for when we have, say, guests over. As mentioned in the first video, when my parents come and stay for a while, they'll be able to utilize, say, my office, and we'll turn this into a bedroom. Or, we do have another bedroom just down. This is the hallway, just kind of down there. So we'll be able to work something out there. And then by having an extra bathroom will definitely come in handy. One thing I want to point out, which is pretty interesting, is that this section right here is not technically under the mudroom. It's under the deck. So that will be a key detail that the contractor will have to make sure is done well, so that it functions basically as a ceiling. So it needs to be airtight, it needs to be watertight, and it's going to need to be insulated. But by actually adding that extended bit on instead of just having, let me turn the house on and then you kind of see them back to back. So by having that extra about 10 feet by 10 feet extension on the basement instead of just cutting it off where the mudroom stops, this is where our existing bulkhead is. So it means we can have direct access from the new addition into the existing basement where all our mechanicals and storage for Christmas trees and all that sort of jazz is going to be. So we're able to leave that all over there and have direct access to it without having to, say, walk around through the current place and then into the basement that way and kind of go the long way around. This way it'll give us direct access through. But what this does mean is, because we're butting up against one and making sure that we turn the bulkhead into an actual finished walkable space, it's going to be interesting, and I'm not really sure how we're going to do it, to be honest, because we need enough foundation wall so that the mudroom and everything can sit above it. But whether we can reuse the existing foundation wall and tie into that, or have to add additional support so that it can handle the additional weight, there's a lot of questions there that I honestly don't have the answers to. I'm nowhere near that qualified, and so I'm going to definitely call in the big guns for that. And so that'll be an interesting detail we'll have to figure out along the way. So we'll have to have a mini split in the basement as well. So while we have one for functionally the ground floor to do everything there, in the northeast, I'm less worried about the heating and cooling of this space because the ground temperature tends to keep everything a pretty stable, cool, almost air conditioner feel temperature. So I'm not really too worried about the heating and cooling, but it can get very humid. In our current basement, I know this very well, before we put a regular dehumidifier in there, everything got moldy really quick in the summer. So by putting a wall unit for a mini split, we can have heating and cooling if it does tend to get really cold in the winter or a little too hot for comfort, but it's mostly going to function as a dehumidifier. And also just right beside it, this will be a 100 amp sub panel. Our current place is only 100 amp, so that'll have to get upgraded to 200 amp, and having a 100 amp sub panel will give us full control over this entire side of the property. I am very excited about this part. So this will function as a movie room, and a couple of design choices is it won't go all the way to the back wall. I'm actually going to build this out about 2 feet. So this projector screen will be acoustically transparent, so I can put all the speakers and everything kind of behind it. Also storage, we can put, bits and bobs back there for storage, maybe canned goods or what have you. We'll be able to hide it back there. But in order to access behind there when needed, this is all going to be hinged. I'm undecided if I want a top hinge, flap up, or side hinge where it flaps kind of wide, arcing, but I'll have to basically build it so this frame basically is a giant window frame, and this bolts basically just right to it, and then it'll hinge open whenever I need to access, say, the speakers or the canned goods or whatever we kind of store back there as well. And then just in front of it, you can see this little blue partition here. That'll be a little extra storage as well for, say, extra blankets or what have you. And my wife and I aren't terribly big fans of the movie room style couches, so we're going to go just regular couches. By the style of this, we're hoping to get just 2 rows, and having a modular couch, we'll be able to put our legs out, kind of relax and hang out watching TV there. And so when our friends come over, we'll have just a little riser behind this couch to utilize one of our existing couches that we'll put back there for folks to be able to come and hang out with us, which is really cool. And of course, more cat things. We need to take care of the cats. There will be cat towels and all sorts of interesting things there as well. I do plan on putting an access point in the basement to make sure that we have good, adequate Wi-Fi coverage down here. But going back to the nerdy details, so there will be a projector probably about here going that way, and I'm going to run HDMI all the way back. This is going to be our network closet. So the receiver will be in here. I'll need an infrared repeater to be able to make sure I control it. But I'm also going to put my home PC and server back here. So getting real deep into the weeds, my home server runs a VM, that is my home PC. So they're on the same box. And so I'm going to actually run USB over Ethernet over into this room. And because I'll be able to plug it directly into the receiver, and then the receiver plugged into the projector, I'll be able to play games without having to do any kind of media streaming. It'll be just direct, basically computer to projector. So I'll be able to play games on the projector, which I'm really excited about. But by having it here, it's going to be centrally located to where the office was as well. So without, again, having to do any kind of remote desktop or streaming or anything like that, I will be able to run DisplayPort and USB over Ethernet from this network closet, punch up through the ceiling, and then the office is really just about here. So by keeping these two centrally located, I'm not going to have to worry about any kind of streaming lag or issues like that. I'll be able to access everything as if the computer was right beside me when it's in the office, and if it was right beside me in the media room here. But by having it also outside the door, none of the fans and noise will actually encroach when we're just watching TV, which is gonna be just awesome. I'm so excited about this. Again, it'll be a little later on, but you know, I can dream. So spinning this around a little bit, if you don't know, I'm an avid home brewer, so having I have a kegerator already, so we'll move that downstairs, and as folks want a beer, they can, you know, go down the staircase, grab a beer, or go watch a movie and come back and grab something. So this will be more like the informal lounge here, where we can just sit and hang out and chat if we want to, and you know, have a drink. But you'll notice that I've kind of added this like little brick kind of facade here. So where this whole, you know, structure is today is actually a brick patio that my wife and I have painstakingly pulled up, and it wasn't cemented together. It was just lying there on the dirt, you know, dirt in between the cracks, of course. But I pulled it all up, and by my math, I think we have just enough to actually build this as a brick wall. We'll probably have the stud wall back there as well, because it'll be a lot easier to attach things like speakers and that to it. But having just a single row of brick of this entire wall and this doorway frame here will be just a really cool way of, you know, reusing some existing material. So like I've always been talking about, you know, we want to make sure that this is as sustainable, you know, reduce, reuse, recycle. So we're definitely on the reuse here, where instead of just throwing away all those red bricks, we're going to reuse them and turn it into a wall here, which will add a really cool element to the space down here as well. So I'm really excited about that too. That'll be a really cool detail to see. Oh man, I just forgot that I didn't even show you guys the loft. I've got to show you guys the loft. Here, let me get this back and let's go back upstairs. So this is my wife's favorite part. You know, she will obviously enjoy watching movies with me down in the basement, but this is her real relax area. This is her kind of sanctuary, if you will. So she'll be able to climb up the stairs, the ladder here, and, you know, this loft isn't terribly wide. This is probably like 8 feet or so here. So we'll actually be able to hook up our hammock. She's got a hammock that she likes to use outside when she reads. So we'll be able to probably just connect it either side here, to be honest. And there'll be plenty of space in this knee wall area. We'll be able to throw plenty of books and stuff in there. And she'll have, you know, a ton of various pillows. And of course, as she's kind of sitting up here and relaxing, she'll be able to look outside to this side. And of course, when she looks down below, she'll have that beautiful vaulted space kind of to look down on. And from here, of course, we love our cats, so they'll be able to climb up, run along the top, and come in and hang out there with her. So she'll be able to turn the lights on and off with a three-way switch somewhere around here, and of course that switch down in the basement. Oh, not down in the basement, sorry, down the hallway as well. So she's really excited about that. I'm really excited for her, actually. This is going to be such a cool space for her to hang around in. So we're really looking forward to it. Alright, this was a long one, so thanks for sticking with me. Hopefully there was a few nuggets in here that gave you ideas or you thought was pretty interesting. Let me know down below which detail you thought was interesting, and if you want me to go even deeper into one of these areas, let me know down in the comments, and I might even do a full video on it. I know I'm really excited to see how this is all going to come together and what changes as we get really deep into the design phase. I will of course keep you all updated with all of these changes, so hit subscribe and the notification bell if you want to come along for the ride. Take care.